How well do you know your vehicle stock and how it is being marketed online? Are your sales managers using multiple systems that don't talk to each other to maintain and market your stock, leaving you with vehicle data in different places and no overall oversight? VI Hub fully integrated stock management software from Autofinity is the answer. VI Hub integrates with your dealer management system, OEM data, and over 50 advertising platforms, including your dealer website, Auto Trader, and OEM websites. Implementing your own retail rules. We are experts in retail process, data, and integration. VI Hub creates comprehensive and accurate advertising data, images, and pricing all in one place for all your vehicles, creating a single view of the truth for all your stock, and automatically feed it where you need it. Analyze your stock. Identify your sales performance and stock turn in detail, identifying which vehicles, manufacturers, models, sales channels, and staff perform best, and why. Sign up for a 60-day free trial today at autofinity.com.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay? Welcome. Great to see such a big crowd, standing room only at the back. That's nice to see. I'm Andy Whitehair. I'm CEO of Autofinity. You just saw a little video of what we do. We specialize in vehicle and parts inventory solutions that look to take friction out of the process and increase speed to market, or improve speed to market, both for cars and parts. I've got a very prestigious lineup here. I hope I don't need to introduce them, but I will anyway, just to embarrass them. So we've got Alex Jones. He was one of the people that started Carbase 20-odd years ago, so he's been part of Carbase man and boy. Similarly, we got Craig Petty, who's also been man and boy in his business, so sales director at Hatfields, 24 years, I think. And I don't know how many years you, Neil, but
a lot.
Everybody knows Neil Smith. Neil Smith's mainly well known for his outrageous jackets. And he's done it again today, so that's great. So Neil's probably best known for COO at Imperial Cars, and then moving to Kazoo.
Yeah, just skip the Kazoo bit.
Neil
was only there 4 months. It's nothing to do with me.
Neil's now set up a consultancy business, Motivate.
Yeah.
So he'll hand out cards afterwards. So I'm just going to start off. I'm going to tell you a few things that you already know, just to set the scene. The last 3 years has been mad, right? So I read from the Cox Automotive update recently, 42 million less cars produced in the last 3 years. And of course, that produces a knock-on effect with everything else. So we've had pandemic. We've had supply issues. That's obviously caused huge problems with new car production. That's had knock-on effect into used cars, and that's affected all the prices. And then to throw into the equation, then we've got, fortunately, because I'm a big supporter of this, we're going hell for leather to try and decarbonize the world. So we're seeing massive change across EVs all at the same time. So with that going on, guys, my first question to you is, how do those issues affect the way that dealers are managing used car stock and should be managing used car stock? He's going
wow, straight in. So I think the changes you're talking about, the effect we're seeing with the supply of vehicles changing, and also the massive price increases we've seen over the recent years, the pockets of stock that's working and the pockets of stock that really isn't, has been quite pronounced. So over the last sort of 12, 18 months, we've seen there have been buckets of vehicles that we've been doing really well, very popular, profitable, and then there are other vehicles that have obviously had huge issues. So you think the one we'll all be familiar with is as soon as Mr. Musk gets on the phone and says, right, it's time to reduce prices, and we all look at our EVs and wish we hadn't got quite as many in stock as we did at that point. And I think the moving parts that we're seeing at the moment is that, but on an even more pronounced scale. So how can you group your vehicles together? Which vehicles are performing well, and then which vehicles are problems? I think that's the area that we're really doubling down on at the moment.
And how do you manage that at Carbase?
So I think that the call out is, the buzzword data, of course, is the big piece. I mean, you look at pre-COVID world, everything was very repeatable. So you could put a vehicle into stock. The depreciation curve was very familiar. Across the board, there weren't many vehicles that actually had wild differences between them. But now you look at the different vehicles you're buying, as you track the data through the life of that vehicle, you can see that that market has huge swings in it that just didn't exist previously. So we're going through and saying, okay, of all the vehicles we've got in stock, what are we measuring every single day? What can we see that's happening in the market today that's going to be an influence for the future? And then, of course, you can't make good decisions on all vehicles because you can't predict things like the big discounts that are going to come into some of the vehicles ahead of time. If you're making better decisions on 99 out of 100 vehicles, overall you should get to an incremental better result.
Yeah. Neil, I know that you...
Yeah, I think everything you said there, Alex, is all around the volatility of the market at the moment. Through my 10 years at Imperial, we didn't have anywhere near that volatility, so we were able to look at marketing strategies and trends, and the profile of stock remained pretty stable. Obviously, there were the good performers, the bad performers. We were able to disseminate that information. We built data platforms that allowed us to do it. If we look at where we are now, you know, we've seen massive price drops in the last 6 to 8 weeks, something that's never been experienced in the trade, on the back of stability, on the back of 2 years ago increasing prices and no depreciation. So for me, it's always been that data piece, and it's understanding your stock profile, what's moving quickest, what's selling quickest, your days to turn, your value-add product penetration, your finance penetration, and basing your buying decisions on that, and just making sure that everything through your process is optimized. So incremental improvements across the whole process, and reducing the days in stock to the absolute maximum or minimum. Yeah, optimizing to the minimum, right.
And I think you, obviously when we worked together, you put a lot of effort into building your own solutions at Imperial to help you manage that, right?
Yeah, so and I know, Alex, exactly the same. 2014-15, we developed all of our own internal infrastructure, moved away from proprietary DMS, and that was all about having the ability to be dynamic, understand what market influences there were, reacting to those market influences, knowing what the right profile of stock was to buy, understanding the pricing to market, all of those sort of things that we do regularly now, and there are tools out there now that allow the dealers to do that, maybe not as integrated as they could be, some of them, but it was about having that data insight and just being able to react to those market conditions.
I think the grading of vehicles as well is critical when you're buying at auction, how quickly you can get those cars onto the pitch. You know, that in certain localities that we've got, say Pickering in North Yorkshire, we are not awash with smart repairers. So if we get a car that needs a load of work doing to it, that's not great for that location. Whereas in Liverpool, they're 10 a penny, so we can turn that car quicker. The other thing we've noticed as well is at auction, as we're disposing of our cars, the cars that are better graded, they are just selling so much better. You know, the bids on those vehicles are noticeably more. They're getting 12, 15 more bids per vehicle than a vehicle that's at grade 4. You know, that is really suffering. We've seen that, definitely. So we've now started to go back to what we were doing 3 years ago, which is prepping cars for auction, getting the wheels done, getting the scuffs done, so when we retail it as a second-hand car through the auction, it's quick, it's easy, the man can get it on show that afternoon, job done.
And one of the things we were talking about earlier, guys, is the difference between gut and science. So I've not been a car dealer. I've been involved in the car industry for 35 years. And I remember really probably 20 years ago, I would meet people in this industry and they go, I've been selling cars for 30 years. Don't tell me how to price cars. Do you think that still exists in the market today, or do you think that's gone? And what do we mean by science as well? Is science just computer systems?
Look, there are still dealers out there that buy on instinct. There are still dealers that will go and stand in the lanes, which is fine, you know. And those tend to be the smaller operators, and you know they have that experience. And there's a place for experience. But we took the emotion out of buying in Imperial. We had 7 buyers that were office-based, didn't go and visit an auction. Everything was done on data. We had some experience in that team, and they would second-face some of those data decisions. So you know, you would overlay that experience, but predominantly due to the volume we were having to buy, which was 2,000 cars a month, it was done on data. We had 5, 6 different data streams coming in, informing us on what the market value of that car should be, what the retail, you know, what the desirability of that car was. And that was the decision-making process. So it was data that drove that business.
Yeah.
When I took my step up to sales director, I was of the old school, auto trader. You either subscribe or you don't. I was definitely I do not subscribe. I believed, there was going to be a man for that car. And then actually when you get into the science of it and stock turn and all the rest of it, I'm now an auto trader believer. So I look at retail rating, I'm looking at advert views. If a car at 30 days old is only getting 15 advert views a week, why you got it? You're not going to sell it. Trade it. Take your first loss. Don't wait the 90 days or 70 days to call it overage. So yeah, I'm a big believer in the data. Sometimes there's anomalies, so especially with EV cars, when Mr. Mustard is party piece, iPace took a real knock. Everybody was really nervous about it. Manufacturers come with the deal, which is great, free charger, good low rate finance. Those cars need to come back, so we got on that drug really early. Other retailers were still afraid of the car. We were just selling them for fun. But yeah, it's,
Those were the days.
yeah.
I feel like we're going down memory lane. I'm going to
That
throw that
wasn't
out.
too long ago. That was only 18
Yeah,
months
I mean, look,
ago.
I'm going to throw it out and say I've got my fondest memories of getting into the lanes, getting into the auctions, a really horrible breakfast to start the day with a lovely catalogue to actually get stuck into and go, right, you're walking up and down the lanes and it's absolutely, you're starting off and saying, how do I feel about this car? Is this standing out? Like, is this calling to me as I'm walking down the lanes? And then getting into the condition of data. And that evolution then moved into something where I'm finding I'm taking my smartphone. I've looked at data before we go in, and I've got an overlay of all the vehicles. So I'm still then looking at that vehicle and saying, oh, this is fantastic. What does the data say? And I'm a bit sad to say it's kind of moved so far the other way now that we're going through and saying, okay, this emotion's coming out of it. But I think with regards to the emotion, the human expertise, and the data and the science piece, if you say, okay, when you're choosing your vehicles, you can do a huge amount. There's a wealth of data that you can buy from some fantastic trusted partners to be able to say, okay, this is a vehicle that is going to work well in my region. But the bit that's still missing from that piece, it says, okay, this particular vehicle I'm looking at, the ownership, the service history, the colours, the additional specifications, but most importantly, the condition of that vehicle. I mean, as we're talking to, if you've got something which is going through and that is a fantastic condition vehicle, it's going to be very easy to prep. It's going to be very fast days to actually get onto our forecourt. There's huge benefit in that. But I would say, personally, I have to come back to the data because I do feel so emotional about the cars still. Yeah. And you say, okay, well, how do you define the difference between the two? How do you take science and emotion? Well, I mean, psychologically, we're even talking about, do we believe in the data? Like, I believe. It's that piece that says if you're going to take a true scientific approach, you should then have a team around you that is actually really pushing back against your ideas. So if you've got the kind of the get-along gang that says, oh, I'm really into these particular vehicles this week because X person's bought one or I've seen X one advertised, okay, well, that's fine. And if you've got a team of people around you that, oh, yeah, that's a brilliant idea, let's crack on, it's healthier to have a team of people in the way that you would deal with it as a scientific approach. Okay, I've got a proposal. I think this is amazing. This is what I'm saying is fact. True science will come back and say, well, actually, I don't believe you. I'm going to prove you wrong. And it's only when it's actually gone through a peer review that says, actually, I can't prove you wrong. Oh, my goodness. And that's truth. That's fact. That's something we can actually get behind. And that piece, I would say, the journey for us is between what do we feel good about, what stock do we know has worked historically, but actually without zooming out and taking in national marketplace data, especially with how volatile the market is today, how could you possibly know whether your own experience is representative or actually you've just got really lucky and you've had 3 vehicles on the bounce that have done well, but in the market, that vehicle's going against you, or vice versa. You have 3 vehicles that you think, actually, these vehicles are really bad. I'm not sure I want to be involved in these. Like the Model 3 Tesla's a prime example. The market's crashing, everybody's all out. Of course, we're all seeing now that price correction. The market's come back. People are excited about them again. Yeah. So I think that how are you processing the data and how are you thinking about it and how do you distribute it between your teams? From the early days, we come on and say, okay, well, this is a very small amount of us making decisions on vehicle up to a more centralized team. How is your decision process made? Is it diluted into your particular stores, into your teams? Is it in single individuals where you might have a key dependency? So I think there's a huge amount of just going back to basics and saying, how are we making our decisions? What data are we using it on? And the kind of the takeaway from today is to go back and just actually sketch that out and say, okay, when was the last time you went and did a review of that piece? And how often do you review that data? And actually, when we're going through the data at the moment, even on a day-by-day basis, the swings in certain models are huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us that data piece was also about knowing what is the next hot car. You know, we had loads of historic data, so we knew what we were good at selling, but we didn't know what the next good thing was going to be. So we would use all of that data out there, retail rating, market condition, performance rating if we were seeing cars on Auto Trader that were performing well, and that would inform us, and we'd then go and experiment with those, with maybe 10 or 20 of those cars and see if they worked for us. So you can use your data all you like internally, which is great, and overlay it on that, but to understand where the market's going, you've got to be bringing that external data in to inform you as to what is the best car right now that you may not be stocking.
I think the other thing as well is you've got to look at your opportunity. So in our franchise world, when new cars were so short, we've got a guy that works for us in Liverpool, and he's great. He's a proper old school market trader. So I can't sell new Evokes, or I can, but I've got a long lead time, but I can get these lovely Velars. And literally just took the whole sales team, fresh pair of eyes, come and look at this. This is what 40 grand gets you. This. Isn't this lovely? Yeah, great. And then suddenly from nowhere, we're selling used Velars, like for fun, and you're going, how's that happened? And of course you go and you look, right, everybody listen to Jay, do this. And then suddenly everyone's going, how are they selling all these used Velars? And we were just, again, saw the opportunity, buy them up. But as new Evoque comes back on, used Velar comes off, because of course we're a franchise dealer and we've still got to do a job for our manufacturer. So yeah, it's that being ability to switch definitely as well. That's where science is great, but sometimes you do need that entrepreneurial spirit to say, no, I'm going to do something different.
So we're all data evangelists, and I imagine many of the people in the audience are as well. We all know that the manufacturers have now made so many variants of the different models. So even if you're an expert in BMW, there's now so many variants with so many features that make a difference in the prices. One of the things we specialise in is what is that car? If you look at the car and you walk around the car and you touch it and you use it, you know what it is. But if it's all in your systems, what challenges do dealers face in describing the car down to a level that allows them to retail price it correctly?
Yeah, I mean, the two challenges we face would be, the first one, from a point of view of advertising your vehicles, you've got compliance is your first piece. So where we've got our brilliant advertising team that are going through and saying, okay, are we advertising the correct, the derivative, the engine code, the emissions, etc. Because as our finance partners will tell us, if we're signing someone up into a vehicle and it isn't that specific vehicle, we've got a huge liability. But then the second piece of that, I think, is around how the customers perceive what is the same vehicle versus what we would perceive. I think we are able to go into lots of granular detail around, okay, well, this is the late version of that particular derivative, so it's got this particular glove box on it. Retail customers, they really don't care to that same extent. They're more interested in saying, okay, well, when I get down to the make, model, and broad derivative level, I think derivative and specification around how the customer's making the decision, I think becomes a very similar piece. And then the challenge then, you look at across the industry and you say all the different ways you can bring things together. Do you say, okay, we're going to use the cap coding, we're going to go through and use like derivative IDs through Auto Trader, but actually the derivative ID could go into too much detail, and you could have multiple IDs for what's broadly the same vehicle, even if one engine came from one factory, one engine came from another, and then, okay, well, how do you cluster them back together? I think it's something you really have to make sure you've got a dedicated amount of time, and certainly internally, we've got people dedicated to that to make sure that when a vehicle comes in, what have we bought? When it lands, is what we think we've bought, what's actually landed, and then are we advertising it correctly? Because worst case scenario, you get all the way through to store. One thing's for sure is as soon as the customer drives away in that vehicle, they'll call you out if you've got it wrong. So having robust checks in place to make sure that you're looking after all those different anomalies is really crucial for us.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing I think I noticed was, as we saw the big online disruptors coming in, they didn't have those processes in place. So dare I say it, I think we may have bought quite a few cars as retail customers from Kazoo because they didn't understand.
Terrible.
Sorry, they didn't understand what this limited edition F-Type was and what was special about it. They just saw a car, they saw its mileage, they saw its age, and they saw a value for that vehicle. Whereas we knew that car had 11,000 quid's worth of options for £3,000, and we could tell the story with a customer. But at the same time, it still trips us up because again, we'll buy a car and it's that, oh, there's been a model year change, and you get your fingers caught. But
yeah, look, data enrichment was massive for us, and it was exactly as you said. There's two reasons for it. Misadvertising kills you. You know, you get customers travelling from 100 miles away to view a car, and then suddenly it hasn't got rear parking sensors on it, and we'd advertise it with it. So we were liable to pay for their journey or whatever. So we didn't want a bad review. But on the flip side, you want to get that data as accurate as possible, because that's what adds value to that vehicle when you're advertising it. You know, that's the difference between the base model derivative and then that car with £5,000 spec. And we may only be able to charge 250, 500 quid more for that car, but the added value means it's far more desirable to the customer. So a lot of dealers will back off putting features on there and factory fit options because of that misadvertising potential.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're reducing the opportunity to sell that vehicle. So if you can get those data streams right, if you can get them all working together and bring all that data in, even with HPI spec check, it's probably only 95% accurate. So we would have our advertising team, our photographers, sanity checking all of the spec that it said it had on it. So we'd have a manual check at the end. And we got to a point where probably out of 2,400 vehicles advertised, we were pretty confident that maybe only 1% of those were misadvertised. So it just gave us that advantage in market to be able to market that car with all of the good stuff on it and give us an opportunity to sell it quicker.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about, as I say, the need for the data. One thing that comes to mind is I worked for Auto Trader and eBay for many years, and I was lucky enough to stand up on stages like this and preach to dealer groups and say, you know, you need to get more of your systems, use our system. And the manufacturers are pushing their system in, and Keyloop's pushing their system in. We recently did some consultancy with a mid-sized franchise dealer group, 300 systems they were using. What's your advice to the audience here about, well, how do you handle that then? So you believe in the data, you've got your CAP data, Keyloop data, Auto Trader data. How do you manage it?
Get a team of 7 developers and pay them a lot of money. That's what we did. No, but seriously, yeah. There are products out there that will bring this data together. Now, okay, the biggest problem is when you're using a proprietary DMS that doesn't open up every element of that DMS to API connectivity. But you can certainly build ecosystems now with very competitively priced products around pricing, around vehicle stock management, that can, you know, you can have an ecosystem that's talking to each other. There will still be some manual transposition when you're pushing stuff into the DMS potentially, but yeah, ultimately it's possible, it's cost effective, it's just knowing where to go to get that product.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously we're subscribed to Autofinity, so things like the error rate of missing mileages or in things that aren't done, you know, so you've got price here and prices like the old days, you'd go on and you change your DMS, you change your website, you change Auto Trader, so all those have become a lot smoother. One thing we did as well is we partnered with a company called Real World Analytics, and a big step for us. And but it's great because, of course, at the press of a button, I can see my sales mix to my stock mix. I can look at the cars that stand out on the scatter graph. So yeah, so it's partnering with good systems and most probably partnering with people that actually know what they're doing, and when it goes wrong can react quickly. But that's been massive for us. I mean, huge. We've got some great numbers. So.
Yeah, I suppose from our perspective, I mean, you look out, there's some brilliant partners. I mean, the amount of shiny things and widgets that we can all buy to add on to our systems that are going to add on all these fabulous, like they're all going to double conversion, they're brilliant. And there are some absolutely fabulous things, but of course, if we went and subscribed to everything in the room today, actually we'd have no money left because it'd all be bleeding out to the partner site. So we try and look at it. I find I have to simplify things, otherwise it blows my head up. So I try and look at context and say, okay, where do we feel that we're really strong and we're winning? And where do we feel actually we've got a blind spot and we haven't got enough information to make a decision? And at that point, you then try and look into it and say, okay, well, are we talking about what we should buy, how we should handle it once we've bought it, how we should prep the vehicle, how we should actually take that through life to stop it going over age? And then at that point, for the moment, I think there's a case to say you actually look at it and go, right, where do I know my plates are spinning really happily, and where have I got a wobbly one where actually I think, you know what, I've got a bit of a legacy team involved. Maybe they're not actually up to speed with the data quite as I would like, and even though the right noises are coming back, at that point, have you got a system with some data, some measurement, and some accountability in that particular team. So you can say, actually, you haven't got a pocket of people that are working really hard, but they might be inadvertently paddling in the wrong direction. So I think, I mean, that's going to be a very personal journey for all of us, because, of course, we're all going to have a huge amount of data in silos. I think the way that we deal with it internally, similar to the way that Neil was describing, we do build a certain amount of midware to actually bring data back together, so that we've got a certain element of our system that's always proprietary, because, of course, as with everyone in this room, we're always trying to just carve out a little niche to be able to at least think that we've got an advantage in the data that's going on. But yeah, I would say siloed data and multiple systems is a huge problem. It's being solved. I mean, API, a computer being able to talk direct to a computer without someone having to go in and put in a reg in miles each time. I mean, that is a revolution that's ripping through the industry. I think it's still talked about, but I mean, go through and challenge your own systems. How many of your systems are actually properly integrated, and have you got a view of a particular vehicle in the context of what the question you're trying to answer at that point? And then if you haven't, and there's big red circle and saying, okay, well, this is where I need to go to look for systems and look for solutions. And there are some brilliant partners in the marketplace to be able to have conversations with and work out where you don't know what you don't know. Where is your blind spot? How can you possibly know what you're missing out on today until you've actually been through the different areas to look for that?
Things like price change. So for us, the different geography, and you've got one guy there that'll say, well, I change my prices once a week. Well, that's no good. He's obviously at an average price change of 700 quid. And there's another guy that's pricing changing 3 times a week, and he's at a price change of 300 quid or 114 or whatever it might be. And those are the things you've got to bring to the forefront to educate the manager to say, do you realise if you just did this and it's all there for you, look, you can see it, change your thinking, do this with your day differently, and then massive change, overnight change.
We were talking earlier on around the fact that prices are moving multiple times a day now. Yeah. How do you think that affects stocking strategies and policies? And because that's a lot of extra. I think in the last 6 weeks, prices have come down dramatically.
Yeah, I think we haven't had that market with depreciation, have we? You've been able to sit on a car for 70 days and not worry about it. Because you knew it was going to sell eventually, and if it went to auction, it might lose you a little bit. Well, now, especially in our world, you could be looking at 4, 5, 6 grand pills. So we're really on the front foot. It's that advert views as well, early on in the process. Why aren't they getting clicked? Is it we're too rich with the pricing? Well, no, the pricing's right. Well, the reason is it's hearing aid beige. It's never going to sell. Why did we stock it in the first place?
Because it's cheap.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that.
Absolutely. Or did we just buy it really expensive because the sales manager hasn't bothered to go and even look at the cover of the car? Yeah,
back to process. I think if you've got stock now that's volatile, the only thing you can do is make sure you're tracking or below market value day in, day out. When you go out and buy again, you can buy that stock that you start to see performing well and use retail rating. But if you're not on that pricing day in, day out, you're not using tools like RWA. I've recently put RTC Real Insights into a dealer probably 3 months ago. It took their days to turn on Auto Trade from 47 to 32. So massive change because they're tracking price day in, day out. They're using systems to make incremental changes automatically. Anything bigger than £200 difference one way or the other is pushed through to the buying team to then second face it. But it's about keeping, and now with 6-7% drop in values over the last 6 to 8 weeks, you've got to take that pill. It's no good holding out for margin. It's not going to come back, not in 6 weeks. So just make sure you're pricing the market. If you have to, price to 98, 97, 96, 95%. Get that vehicle gone, go again, go and buy the right stock.
I think that's, with regards to the stock that's coming through, if anyone's got a crystal ball and they were able, back in 2020, to say, right, in 21, the summer, everything we're going to buy, it's going to go to the moon. We're going to leave it in prep as long as we possibly can. It's going to go up in value a fantastic amount. We're going to exit with a fabulous profit. Did anyone see that in 22 that it was coming back through? Probably there are a handful of people who did, but I guess they're not in the room trying to learn it in the same way we are today. I think that what's going to happen start of next year, there's huge talk, the swings in the supply of vehicles, what's going to become available with the zero emissions mandates, is that going to create pockets of vehicles that are going to turn and come back up? We've seen this with electric. We know that there will be bottoms of markets. I think I totally agree with my colleagues on you've got to be alive to the pricing. I think overreacting and going and actually slashing your prices and fire selling your stock because you're afraid of what might happening. I think, okay, I mean, if you've got some magic source of vehicles that the rest of us aren't able to tap into that says you can go and buy a fabulous selection of desirable stock that's got minimal prep. If you spent good money prepping that vehicle and you know that actually that this is a vehicle that historically in my region, my customers, they like this vehicle, I've got confidence in it, then I think that the call out on that vehicle is saying, well, why would you want to go and hyper distress that? If you've got something that it's hearing aid beige with the brown interior and actually we're kind of regretting like, oh my goodness, I must have had too much to drink the night before when I put my hand up for that one, then yeah, okay, maybe that's time to actually get that into a more aggressive price to market. But that kind of piece around how you're making those decisions, you can't just go and take a one-size-fits-all approach.
No.
Because that individual car, the data won't be able to call out well enough those combinations of vehicles that then says, look, this is flat red, it's hearing aid beige.
Yeah.
Actually, this one's a beautiful red, and actually it's a lovely yellow that is someone that really going to get excited about. If you just took a one-size-fits-all data approach, you'd be missing out on those opportunities. So that kind of hybrid that says, okay, what's going on in the market as a whole, understand that to a model level, but then with that individual vehicle, ownership, service history, preparation, how much confidence do you have in that vehicle as to how you're then going to try and distress that price at your peril, because you might find that we come into the first quarter and you'll be wishing you haven't. So it's the same old thing. I think unless anyone's got a crystal ball and they can call out, I'd be glad to meet with you afterwards if you have.
So Neil, you've taken your many years of experience of what we're talking about now, and you now go out and consult and help with dealers.
Yes.
Well, what are the things that you're discussing with them, the things we're talking about today, or are there other things that they're facing that we should be talking about?
Well, it's predominantly, there are dealers out there that have seen performance drop over the past few months, trying to understand why. The focus is always on days to turn. Ultimately, it's about days to turn. The quicker you can sell the car, the more profit you'll retain, you can go again. So what I'll do is just look at every part of the process. So as Ops Director of Imperial, I was across everything from sourcing, pricing, marketing, preparation. So incremental changes through each of those processes, saving half a day in each of them and saving 5 days on your total stock turn.
Yeah.
Looking at that, again, looking at the quality of what you're doing in marketing to ensure you are putting that car out there with the best chance to sell it, making sure the pricing's right, making sure the prep's right, getting that prep done at a competitive cost, making sure it's prepped to a good standard and getting it done quickly. Making sure that all of those images are on that vehicle, advertised right, and all the data's right, and you're not having problems. You're not. If you put cars out there with a placeholder, you're just causing a problem for yourself, because customers are going to be ringing in saying, "Can I have some images?" Yes. So you've got a salesman taking time putting images together. Suddenly the customer hasn't looked at the colour, it turns up and in the images it's yellow. It's a waste of a salesman's time. So if you're going to advertise cars out of prep, make sure you've got a set of images. Get as good an images as you can as they arrive at prep. If it's got a scuff wheel, just miss that out. Get those images out there, make it, merchandise it as early as possible. And then if the customer orders it and it's in prep, make sure you've got a process where you prioritise it through prep so the customer gets it as quickly as possible. So for me, I'll go in and I'll look at those operations across the whole piece and see where there are those real incremental gains, which could be a day, could be half a day, but if that turns into 5 days, and as I said, the dealer I've worked with recently, we've taken that from 47 to 32 days in terms of from first published. And that's a massive change, just looking at those incremental gains.
I think that sometimes as well we forget about the other end of it. So, why is a car sold on a Saturday and then delivered on a Friday night? No, people work from home now, working patterns have changed, those things, definitely. We're a little bit different. We'd never ever put a car up for sale that hasn't been fully prepped, because we will justify the fact that it's had 4 new tyres, because of course 22-inch wheels, 4 new tyres can be 1,800 quid. So, we'll always take the images from the BCA sale, wherever we're buying it from, and we'll slip those on to get the car advertising, I suppose. But if we're prepping it, we prep it right.
Do you think the bizarre situation of 2021-22 meant that days in stock turn, speed to market went out of fashion, or have they always I just get a feeling that maybe they're coming back to the fore again
Yeah,
as people.
absolutely. I think so. Definitely. I mean, even I, as a director of the business, even I stopped looking at how many cars we had over 3 days waiting prep. You know, just because, of course, everything was selling, everything's rosy, we're smashing plan, isn't this great? Trade's making a fortune, but no, now, well, maybe, you know, certainly a year ago, we started saying, right, no, if it's here for 3 days and it hasn't been prepped and isn't on show, what's the reason with that car? And it makes a big difference.
I think that the call out on that, if you're looking at the vehicles that are coming through, I mean, we've put an eye-watering amount of money into a centralised preparation process, tracking the vehicle, tracking who has worked on it, all the minutes that's actually been spent on that particular vehicle, and that's been hugely valuable. But actually, you still get to that point that says, okay, you've got a finite amount of resource, either in cosmetic or mechanical, and then how are you making the decision on the next vehicle you're buying? Like, if you've got a backlog in mechanical and your buying team is still piling your vehicles in that are needing cam belts, full services, 4 tyres, then you're not winning at that point of view. So are your teams joined up on that respect to understand, well, if you have got capacity in the body shop, then okay, well, let's knock ourselves out and go and buy some cars that needs a few alloy wheel refurbs and need a few panels of paint, because we can actually get on with that. But I think when you drill it down and say the types of vehicles that you bring through the process, if you join it up end to end and you say, okay, where we're talking about what's the science of stocking the correct vehicles, how much are you drilling into the vehicle end to end to say, okay, well, if we looked at what's going to earn us the most profit, we'll fill the site with Land Rovers. What's going to kill the after sales team? We'll fill the site with Land Rovers. So it's like there's variations of that runs all the way through the business. So when you're actually thinking about your stock mix, who have you got in your preparation team? Who have you got access to? What's their skill set? If they're phenomenal at preparing transporter vans, then brilliant, get into transporter vans. But actually, if you've got some ex-techs that were hardcore Audi techs, then play to your strengths. Who's the team that you've got that's really going to get through that stock? Because one thing we're absolutely seeing is there are vehicles that go through the process and they'll have an issue, and that issue isn't a fixable issue, and it isn't about whether we got a motivated, talented person in front of the vehicle. It's got some real complicated, either there's a very difficult electrical diagnostic to happen, that maybe it's an electrical issue, or actually it could be some kind of mechanical issue that's pretending to be an electrical issue, or is there some kind of huge backorder parts? I mean, we look at the messenger groups, we're all seeing everyone's headlights are currently being cut out of expensive cars, because actually there's this huge market in, well, I can't get this particular item for love nor money, so suddenly there's this underground market of people going out and cutting them off of forecourts. It's just wild. So I think being informed in what's going on, and when you see pockets of vehicles, then communicating that internally is crucial for us to then actually say, okay, we can recognise a mistake, but can we recognise it quickly and then get that info into the team to try and keep that entire pipeline healthier? Because when there's a lot of vehicles coming through, exactly as you call it, it doesn't take much, and you can get a snarl up in the system.
Well, I'm just thinking Craig's got a compound of Land Rovers.
Indeed.
And hopefully you pay your after-sales leader a good wage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, the thing as well about the buying of cars and the sourcing of cars, you know, we've got some dealers that have switched on to motorway and are buying cars through the motorway channel. Some dealers absolutely hate it. Well, the dealer that absolutely loves it is the guy that's buying cars under 3 years old. He's able to go and pick them up, get it fixed under warranty if it's got any issues. He knows he's only in for tyres, really, distant pads and the service. But the other guy, of course, has been buying the 5-year-old car that isn't under manufacturer's warranty, and it's turning up with something wrong with it. And of course, he's then absolutely getting hammered. He's got the car sat in a compound waiting to be prepped because it needs balance shafts or whatever it might need. And he's absolutely switched off to motorway. But yet, dealer A is still buying those cars through that channel or another channel. And yeah, that's being cute, that's being smart. Know that you're only going to take 1,500 quid out of it, but you might get a really nice swapper. You might get a finance opportunity. Not every car's going to make you £5,000, guys. You know, let's keep turning.
I've got one more question. I don't know if anybody's got any questions. We've got a roving mic if anybody wants to ask. But we talked earlier about, we've got all these other things. The bit I didn't mention at the beginning when I was introducing is inflation. So you were talking, Alex, about it. So we've got prices coming down and we've got costs going up. Staffing costs, parts costs, labour, you know, all the costs. And you've all been talking about you need to be communicating better, you need to be checking data better. How do you balance that conflict, that paradox?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, it's been the last 18 months has just literally been waging more on rising costs wherever you're looking. That item, that service, that particular widget that you're buying, there's some kind of big increase going in, which is this inflationary piece that's driving it. But of course, in the background, it's saying, okay, well, where's the margin that we're able to pass on? Because unless we all, and in fact, there's a good idea. If we all collectively today agree to all put our prices up to actually cover all this increase in costs, it'd be fine. Of course, it's never going to happen, is it? So actually, we're expected to suck up all of this increased cost within the margin of the particular vehicle, and then, okay, can we deal with that by volume? We say, okay, well, if we sell some more, we put this velocity trading model in, so if we increase stock turn, well, that's fine, as long as we can buy another great unit that's got great desirability and get it prepped in the right time, then that piece works. Otherwise, I think that piece of work that we've been embarking on really has just been a review of every nut, bolt, screw supplier agreement. And it's been really disappointing to some of the exploits that we found as we've gone into some of what we would consider as a trusted partner who's been supplying us for 20 years, and actually the way then they've altered their pricing, and it's totally disproportional to what's available in the rest of the market. I think that was a disappointing journey to go through, but actually a really eye-opening one with how much money there was to be saved through lots of what you might consider rats and mice on the budget line. But actually, when you really get into it, there's an enormous amount of money that's disappearing.
Yeah, look, everything comes down to efficiencies, whether that be in your purchasing, whether that be in your buying. The one thing I'd say to dealers is just open up your sourcing channels as wide as you can, because you want to be buying stock that is quick to prep if you can. Get it through prep as quickly as possible. That's not easy at the moment. There's not as much volume out there. But if you restrict it to a couple of channels, talking about motorway there, that is a reasonable channel at the moment. You've got one guy who's doing a really good job on it, one guy who's not buying the right stock through it potentially. But just look at those channels so you have got that stock to replace if you start to look at a velocity pricing and velocity sales model. You know, stock turn, again, will generate more profit, more margin, more volume. But you have got to have that stock to replace. And if you're sourcing from one channel predominantly, that's going to be difficult. So just open up those channels, look at everything that's available out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Echo what these guys say, really.
Is it different in the franchise market?
No, not at all. We've just gone paperless, which is huge for us. So we've partnered with a paperless deal provider. That's great. But no, I mean, we're pretty lean anyway. When you look at profit per employee as a group, we are up there. We don't have lots of middle management and those sorts of things, and we're pretty reactive. But it's hard work. It's really tough.
Well, I think that's the point. It's about putting the effort in.
Yeah,
you know, this doesn't just come easy. Not now. You've just got to have all those I's dotted, all those T's crossed, as you said, Alex. Look at those pain points. You know, the low-hanging fruit. Put those right first, and then just carry that mentality and philosophy across all of the business.
Yeah, I mean, the magic of economics is going to make everything right. I mean, I joke about the margins, but of course, naturally, we will all increase margin because we have to actually pay for the cost that's in the background. And there's a limit to the disruption that's come along that says, okay, well, running a car dealership's easy. It's just a tech project. We're not selling cans of WD-40 with a particular SKU code that you can just go to market with. Every single vehicle we're selling is unique. There will come a time where the companies that are out there that are willing to work at these exorbitant losses, the magic money tree will run out and suddenly it will come back to normal. But I think the truth of it is it's extremely painful for all of us in the middle while we're trying to compete against people that are just willing to burn cash to sell motor cars. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for them. It's not healthy for us. So the magics will come through.
We'll get you lying down again.
Once again, I was only there 4 months.
I think, have you got the mic? I think we've got a question here. Thank you.
Hello? Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Andy Shields. I work for Indicator. We're one of the data providers, pricing, etc. When we go into a customer with our data, etc., some people adopt it really well, some people don't. And a lot of that tends down to be the organisational structure and the organisation of the dealership and how they change the organisation to adapt to the data and the extra data that comes through. So I'm just interested in your viewpoints in terms of organisationally, what recommendations would you give to a dealership that's trying to go through this transition from a traditional player to a data organised player?
Yeah, from my point of view, it's a bit like an alcoholic. You've got to know you've got a problem before you address it, haven't you? You've got to have a want to do it. So I usually deal with dealers who come to me and say, look, come in and tell us what we can do different. Yeah, and they're open arms to hear suggestions. They don't necessarily take on all my advice. Some of them don't take any of it, so I don't work with them anymore. But I think it's about there needs to be that understanding that there's potentially an issue in the business. What is that issue? It's going to be probably volume has dropped. They're not getting their stock turn. They're not making the right profit. So they're then open to listen and they're open to work with me. But to try and go into an operation where they don't feel they've got a problem and they don't think that data is the solution, you're on a loser straight away. So I think it is difficult. And if you're being called into a dealer, then, or is this more of a sort of a proactive sales outreach campaign?
Yeah, it's more a case of, I mean, we're brought in by, let's say, the chief executive, the owner of the business, who is, he knows he's got a problem. He's recognised that his margins are under pressure. He recognises that his stock turn's not where it needs to be, and he sees the fact that we've got lots of data, more data than Auto Trader. We've got market day supply. We can identify best cars to buy. We've got an auction company that can give you the cars and supply them to you. So we've got all that. They go in, they go, yeah, I want to do this, but it's the organisation, it's the people in the business that need to suddenly start adopting all this. And some dealerships restructure themselves to accept extra data. Some dealerships still leave it to the guys who go, well, I've been in the motor trade 30 years and I know what a car's worth. And at which point you're buggered.
Well, that's
and how do you advise a chief executive to kind of reorganise themselves?
At the base level, you have to tell the chief executive that you've got people there that shouldn't be there. That's it. And if he's allowing the team below him to operate that way, even though he's got a different view and a different vision, then he's not a very good chief executive.
You've got to start with the end in mind, haven't you?
You have, yeah.
And it's what it's going to motivate that person. Is it money? Is it hope? Well, most times it's money, and it's just showing them what it's worth to him. If you do this, you will do this, and that will make you this. And you can get all the data.
It's having the will and the strength, I suppose, to manage that change. Yeah. Nobody likes change, and if you're taking an old school buyer who does it through the catalogue still and he knows best, there's got to be a discussion with that individual and say, well, okay, let's start feeding some data in and try and turn. And I've done it with a couple of old school buyers who originally didn't want anything to do with data, but you have to spoon feed it, start to show them the benefit, and then now they're flipped completely the other way.
Guys, I think we've run out of time.
Sorry.
We could probably go on for another couple of hours. Thank you very much for your attention. If you could give the panellists your appreciation.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.